Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to the inaugural Get Rich Education podcast. I am your host, Keith Weinhold. I am grateful that you have decided to join me today. But I realize that you're not here for me. You are here for you. You are probably going to hear some things, frankly, that you have never heard before. You want to do more with less. With less of your time and money expended up front, you can free up more time and money later, forever. If you're here, you're probably interested in doing that. Well, the good news is that a substantially better lifestyle is easily within reach and with relatively little effort. So if you're here, you don't merely want to survive, you're in the club that wants to thrive. I mean, what do you have to do to thrive? Well, for one thing, you need to think differently. Thinking differently is actually, well, it's really not being normal. I mean, normal? Why would one want to be normal? Unfortunately, even here in the United States, where I'm podcasting from, normal is barely having enough money at the end of the month. It's being tired and overworked. It's being undernourished, but not underfed here in the U.S. It's having a lack of time or energy to properly exercise. It's really yearning for more time with your family or friends that you're not getting or you're not getting enough of. And it doesn't have to be that way. People are making a misallocation of resources every day. As soon as you say yes to something in your life timeline, you say no to something else. You know, a misallocation of resources is what it is. I mean, people spend time mastering Groupon, an online coupon service, rather than learning about a financial concept like leverage or arbitrage or the velocity of money. Just look at the way you act at the car wash's vacuum cleaner station. How you rush around trying to vacuum your car so you can get it all done on the first 4 quarters on that first dollar. You know, people get consumed with daily trivialities. If you're going to expend time and effort in learning how to do something the most efficient way, would you rather expand to the upside with those efforts, or would you rather spend those efforts contracting to the downside? Well, you can only contract so much, and when you do, you're voluntarily and needlessly resigning yourself to a lower standard of living anyway. Wouldn't you rather practice expanding to the upside? Of course you probably would. When you do, you're living better anyway, and you're more likely to be a producer that way. It really comes down to a scarcity mentality versus an abundance mentality. Well, money is not a scarce resource. Yes, money is not a scarce resource. It's abundant. In fact, money's so abundant that holding on to a chunk of money creates a little bit more money called simple interest, and then both that original bigger money pile and the little money that was created out of that, well, that little money creates even more baby money called compound interest. I mean, that's how abundant money is. You're really hearing about money every day, whether you drive by a gas station daily that show the prices and those big numbers along the road. You're listening on the radio, the S&P 500's up, the Dow Jones is down. You know, money is the lifeblood, the circulatory system of the economy. And it's the economy that you and I and all of us are participants in every day, whether we want to be or not. I want you to understand the financial system that you operate in every day because it touches every aspect of your life. I mean, if you think about it, you get up every day to go to work. And you go to work to make money. And when you're not at work, you're thinking about ways that you need to spend that money and hopefully invest some of that money. Most everything that you want in life, the gifts you want to give, the things you want to accomplish, the security you want to feel, the activities you want to go out and participate in, most of the things that you want to do really involve money. So if you don't understand it at the core, then it's going to be difficult to make good decisions with money. That's why you need to learn how to be the best investor that you can be. You can be a good investor. I don't even know you, but I already know that you can be a good investor. How do I know that? Because you already are an investor. Everyone's an investor. You're investing your time right now listening to this. You need to decide to play a game worth winning. Most people think that those who don't have to work for money, the wealthy, are just born that way. They think, oh, the wealthy learn how to operate the profitable business from dad, and then they're going to take it over someday and they'll be wealthy themselves. Well, most times it doesn't work that way. Most of the wealthy are self-made. I got to tell you, the first time I ever read in a book, I think it was a Robert Kiyosaki book, I read that being wealthy is a choice. I thought, that's so ridiculous, I don't even know if I can continue reading this book. Being wealthy is a choice. Well, I'm glad I continued to read that book and more books like it over the years, because now I know that being wealthy is a choice. Let me share with you the number one reason why people aren't wealthy. And you're going to think it can't possibly be that simple. That's it? Yep, this is it. The number one reason people aren't wealthy, I learned this from one of my favorite business authors, Brian Tracy. That reason is this: it doesn't occur to them that they can be. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't occur to people that they can be wealthy. Yes, it starts in the mind. It starts with making the right decisions. Your life is made up of time. Time is our most valuable resource. I mean, at least here on this earth, all we've got is time. You know, some people say time is money and money is time. I don't think I agree with that. Time is only money if you're trading your time for dollars, like at work. Or maybe, wherever you're listening from, if you're trading your time for euros or pesos, pounds, renminbi, rupees, whatever currency you're measuring your prosperity in. And really, prosperity shouldn't be measured in currency, but that's a discussion for another day. But, anyway, you need to determine with your decision making, with your limited resources, what's greater? The benefit of you doing something that you desire to do, or the what's called opportunity cost of not doing that something? Say you want to make it to all of your child's little league or soccer games, and your goal is to go to every one of them, home and away. Let's say that you decide to go on a Hawaiian vacation where you learn to surf, or if surfing's not your thing, you're snorkeling off Maui's south coast there at Molokini Crater, underwater, building memories with loved ones, seeing those colorful, what are they called, pennant fish with the black and white stripes and the yellow tail in that crystal clear water. You're making conscious decisions to do those things. You can either choose to do that, something desirable and purely pleasurable, or alternatively, you could work your job as a paralegal, working extra time on the weekend to earn more money and maybe move up in the firm, or doing your job as a backhoe excavator over the weekend because it pays overtime. Well, what you're doing then is you're trading your time, your most valuable resource, for dollars. You're desiring to do those things over the pleasurable things mentioned earlier. Well, then you're paying an opportunity cost with either choice. Opportunity cost is the loss of the gain that you would have had from an alternative. You worked overtime on the weekend to earn more money in the mere hopes that you can live better someday or give better someday? Well, along your life timeline, you will spend more time with your coworkers than your friends or family in a lot of cases. I hate saying that. You know it's true. You need to hear it sometimes. So, you have to wonder, is that the kind of lifestyle that you want to design for yourself? What do you really want? Some people are so used to making sacrifices that they really don't even know what they want anymore. You need to peel back every layer of your mental onion and think deep down, what do you really want? That's actually quite difficult for a lot of people. A lot of people have forgotten what their dreams are because they've chose to live their fears rather than live their dreams. You need to begin your journey to betterment with the end in mind and then work your way back to see what will get you there. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Your future depends upon the choices that you make today. If you want things to be different, you've got to do something different. Act differently. That starts with thinking differently. That's working your way all the way back. What shapes our choices? There's things like pleasure and pain, known versus unknown, comfort versus fear. And risk is a big factor. Risk and perceived risk shape our choices. Risk is what? It's the risk of something bad happening. We don't typically classify risk as the risk of something good happening. People think if I get financially educated and invest, I could still lose money. And that could possibly happen, yes. Well, if you don't get financially educated, paying that opportunity cost, and don't invest, and your best known alternative is a lifetime of trading your time for dollars, well then is that a risk of something bad happening? No, I contend that would be worse. That's a certainty of something bad happening. So really then, what would be riskier or more fearful? Especially if you don't like your job that much, or even if your job's okay, but you think your hours could be better spent elsewhere. Robert Kiyosaki, someone that's had a great influence on me, he's the #1 personal finance author of all time. He's the author of the Rich Dad books. Robert Kiyosaki says that what distinguishes the wealthy from the poor is fear. Well, I say nothing dispels fear like education. Education gives you ideas, both content and the context in which to place it. Actionable ideas. Let me give you an example. It's a real estate example. My 26-year-old friend, James, wanted to buy a single-family home. He had never owned a home before. He was looking to get married. He was looking to settle down. He showed me pictures of the home. It was a $259,000 home, and he was saving up to put a 20% down payment on it. And James knows I invest in real estate a little bit, and I couldn't hold off other than just at least saying to James, hey James, why don't you consider instead buying a fourplex for $500,000? And James' reaction was, oh, well, I can't afford that. And I let James know, you don't have to. You just need to know how to. Look, James, with an FHA loan, it's Federal Housing Administration loan, all you need to do is put down a 3.5% down payment, live in the unit for 1 year. Your minimum credit score only needs to be 620. In fact, you can use a portion of the tenant income, the tenants that live in that building, to qualify for the loan, using other people's money to qualify for the loan. James did decide to go ahead and do that, to buy a fourplex. He lived in one unit of the fourplex and rented out the other 3. And as often happens when one buys a fourplex, the other 3 units were already occupied, and James lived almost rent-free. Now, James only has to live there for a year to qualify for the FHA loan under most circumstances, and that's just what he did. So besides James living almost rent-free because the tenant's rent income pretty much offset all of the expenses for the building every month. The principal, the interest, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the utilities, the repairs, and so on. Well, besides James getting that benefit on a monthly basis, James had a $500,000 building. Real estate appreciates at about 5% per year historically. So on a $500,000 building, James got $25,000 of appreciation that first year. Oh wait, I told you James only put 3.5% down on the building, so he only put $17,500 down, and he got a $25,000 return. How did that happen? That's a rate of return of more than 100%. Well, that's what's called leverage. With a small down payment, James was able to control both his down payment and the money borrowed from the bank and get a return on both of those things. That $470,000 or $480,000 or whatever that was borrowed from the bank, that 5% appreciation on that amount, that goes to James. That doesn't go to the bank. James used leverage and other people's money, the bank's money for the appreciation, other people's money, the tenant's money, to offset his monthly expenses. And after a year, it was actually 14 months for James, he moved out and he now has 4 rent incomes. Okay, so besides those 4 rent incomes coming in, he used that to qualify for the next property. When James moved out and he had 4 rent incomes from that property, that more than offset all of the monthly expenses from the property, including a factor for occasional vacancies. And that's what's called cash flow. When the income exceeds the expenses from a property, that's positive cash flow. And that money comes to James every month, whether he goes out and works or not. James is taking on debt in his name in order to qualify for the property. However, I showed James that he is going to start feeling differently about debt, and he did, when someone else is obligated to pay that monthly mortgage debt for him, the tenants. See, most people's experience with debt is that they're underneath it. When tenants pay the rent for you, you're on top of debt now. That's good debt. Now, James did have some problems dealing with one set of tenants when he lived there that first 14 months that liked to have loud parties. And, everything wasn't perfect. And, he got a few lessons in managing property and managing people and sometimes scheduling some subcontractors to take care of some things on the building. But, I basically helped James make a very reasonable, rational analysis of publicly available data buying a building in a market here with job creation for a stable tenant base. Well, 14 months after James moved out, he moved into a duplex. He lived there for a year. Then finally, James moved into a single-family home. He had 6 rent incomes, 4 from the fourplex, 2 from the duplex. He could use those 6 rent incomes to help qualify for a far better single-family home than he would have had for $259,000 just about 2 years ago. Additionally, when James moved into the single-family home, he hired a property manager. Hiring the right manager is key, so that this income is completely passive for James. We call that passive income versus active income. That income shows up whether James goes to work or not. He could stay in bed 30 days in a row for the month, and $2,200 cash flow is still going to appear for James. James is well on his way. He will build wealth over time. That $2,200 a month after 2 years, what is that, about $26,000, $27,000? Not that much, but he's also getting the appreciation on those properties, loan pay down from the tenants, tax benefits, and some great inflation hedging. I showed James how, rather than choosing to live below his means, focus on expanding his means, just like Rich Dad says. I didn't show James how to get rich quick. I don't do that. But I have greatly enhanced James's chances of building wealth slowly over time. Not even a great deal of time, and work a lot less for it. James self-manages property to begin with for the first 2+ years. Where possible, I recommend to people that they self-manage property for 1 to 2 years so that they understand property management from the inside. And after that, finding and hiring a professional manager is absolutely key, finding the right one. It's not essential that you self-manage, but it's helpful when you can. You're going to be able to interpret that property manager's monthly statement that they send to you, along with that all-important rent check, or probably an electronic distribution every month. Boy, isn't that a thrill to get every month. Well, how much time and money would James have had to spend? Consider this. For that $2,200 of additional income that's tax-advantaged and inflation-hedged and passive, how much time and money would James have had to spend going back to a college or a trade school to get another degree or a professional certification to earn that much more money? James didn't have to do any of that. Even if he did, he would be concentrating his focus on a lifetime of trading time for dollars, more than likely. Here's what excites me. I look forward to what lessons James's children are going to learn about thinking and acting abundantly, because they come from a mentality of financial education and expansion rather than one of scarcity and constant sacrifice. Not only is James using OPM, other people's money, he's using OPT. In a sense, he owns a piece of that tenant's labor. Every day, the tenants in his properties go to work, and a piece of the fruit of their labor, their money, is going to James. By saying I'm using other people's money and other people's time, that's not exploitative. Operate with integrity. My personal mission with the apartment buildings and rental properties I have is to provide tenants with housing that they find clean, safe, affordable, and functional. If I'm doing clean, safe, affordable, and functional, I can feel really good about what I'm doing. I'm providing housing to people. You would provide housing for people. Food, shelter, clothing, safety. Housing is one of the essentials to human life. You're providing value. Businesses prosper when they provide value to others. When someone grows up and comes of age and they're about to move out of their parents' home, usually in their 20s after college or high school, no one ever goes out and says, I'm going to go out and live a small life, and I'm going to meet a girl, and we're going to get married. She's going to be my wife, and we can live a small life together, and then teach our children how to live a small life too. No one goes out and says that, but then that's exactly what almost everyone goes out and does. Well, then why do most people live and think this way? Why is this scarcity mentality reinforced multi-generationally, really? It's because we don't teach financial education in school. Okay, your great-grandparents or grandparents lived during the Great Depression. It was an awful time economically for this country, and the bank could call a mortgage note due at any time. If you owed money on a property in the form of a mortgage loan, the bank could call that entire note due at any time, and if you couldn't pay the entire loan balance, the bank could come take over your property. Mortgages were seen as a necessary evil. People had mortgage-burning parties when they burned the mortgage papers. In the early 1980s, your parents paid up to 14, 16, 18% interest on mortgages. That's what rates were back then. Pay it down, pay the loan down. That was the prevailing mantra then. Well, those things aren't true today, with mortgage interest rates that are sometimes even lower than the rate of inflation. But these old myths persist because we don't teach financial education in school. Most investors invest in stocks for what we call capital gains investing. You hope their value goes up over time and that you sell them for more than you bought them for. People get excited when they see the stock market rise. Over time, the returns from major stock indices are just absolutely dwarfed by the returns of prudently leveraged cash-flowing real estate. Did you ever consider that the stock market on a capital gains basis, it has to hit all-time highs every day just to keep up with inflation. But many people don't have the education to invest in anything else, even if they don't really want to be in the stock market. Jim Rohn said that formal education can make you a living. Self-education can make you a fortune. I don't have any formal education in wealth building. My bachelor's degree was not in economics or finance, it was in geography. I'm not a licensed agent in any U.S. state or anywhere in the world. I'm not a mortgage loan officer, and I don't have any professional certification at all. I don't need it. I don't come from a real estate family either. I showed a leverage example to my dad a few years ago, and his reaction was somewhere between, I don't get it and I don't care. I was almost laughing at myself for his lack of interest in this afterwards. So, I don't know how to be a handyman. I don't know how to set ceramic tile. Don't ask me to replace a faucet. Maybe I could get through it with YouTube videos on my iPhone. I can't get caulking a bathtub right. The simplest thing. Everything just sticks to my fingers. Give me a set of power tools and all I'll make is a mess. I'm self-educated. Reading books, attending seminars, spending quite a bit of time and money traveling to them over the years, listening to podcasts like this, but it's paid me back infinitely over time. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Do you ever think about that? You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Your income is 2. Be around people that will pull you up. Don't only be around ones that know that a top way to make money is to trade their time, the very fabric of their lives, for dollars. Those people lack ideas. Sometimes to learn, you first need to unlearn. An idea is the spark to wealth creation. An idea is a little hinge. Little hinges swing big doors. No person has a money problem. Really, no person has a money problem. I know that you don't have a money problem. In fact, you don't even know anyone with a money problem. They have an idea problem. Lack of money is only a symptom of the underlying cause, which is lack of an idea. Most people's only ideas about wealth building don't build wealth because their ideas are to earn dollars, not to make dollars. Look, you may or may not like your job working on the network in the IT department or driving a forklift or diagnosing medical patients, but do you want to live a life where you have to do those things? Wouldn't you agree it would be nice to have the option not to do it if you no longer wanted to or were able to? The thing is, we're really looking at outcomes here. You work for money to free up time. I invest in real assets in real estate to create more passive cash flow, which also creates more time. But even time isn't the ultimate outcome, although that's a great one. It really isn't until you convert that time into things like joy, peace, happiness, love, freedom. So it's not quite all about time. Your time could be miserable if you have a certain medical condition or you've got family discord. What's going to build joy, peace, happiness, freedom, and love for you? Last month, my wife and I left our home here in Anchorage and we went back to Pennsylvania, where I'm from. My 92-year-old grandmother lives in Lancaster County. She knew we were coming. We showed up at her door. I gave her a big hug. We saw how she was doing. We bought groceries for her. I sat down and had good conversations with her. That's a gift that I have a 92-year-old grandmother and she's doing so well. After visiting Grandma for 3 days and 2 nights, we drove to upstate Pennsylvania, and I was there for my parents' 43rd wedding anniversary. I wasn't just sending a card and giving a phone call this year. I was there to share that with them. I'm proud that they've done that. That's a gift. I sure wasn't born rich, but I made out pretty well in the parent and kid lottery, I can tell you that. Those are the type of outcomes that I look for. Some people like to say, I don't have time for that when it comes to what they really want as an outcome. Some even say those sort of things as if they're wearing it as a badge of honor. Well, what if you could say, I do have time for that? Wouldn't you like to say that? You're going to be able to say that when you know how to do more with less, rather than merely having to trade your time for dollars almost every day. So I hope I've instilled some different thought patterns and new ideas about how you invest your time and your money today. Your thinking really is vital to moving ahead. But most people have believed the same rigid thing for so long that they just think it must be true. And the mind can become so rigid that it takes some thought and work for it to become pliable again. To learn about the value of a financial education, a get-rich education. I'm grateful that you have invested your time with me. Hey, join me October 22nd to 25th in New Orleans for the New Orleans Investment Conference. The speakers there are amazing. It includes former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan, one of my favorite economists, Peter Schiff, as well as the real estate guys. I hope to see you there, and I would love to meet you. Until then, go out there and don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to the Get Rich Education Podcast, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.